The alleged racism case against Allison Pearson, a Telegraph journalist, has been dropped, and Nigel Farage has some very interesting opinions on racism and what we should be able to say. What are the limits? What are the lines drawn in free speech? So let's get straight into the video.
So I'm very pleased to say that all the charges against Allison Pearson, or potential charges, have been dropped. Allison herself has given us this statement. I am hugely relieved that Essex police have come to their senses. It's scary and upsetting for a law-abiding, decent person to face an accusation of stirring up racial hatred. What my case has revealed is the appalling overuse of non-crime hate incidents to silence opinions.
One-off anecdote. We need data to actually outline, is this a problem? And if it is, we need to tackle it. But her own experience is not data.
That everyone down the pub would think were completely normal. Free speech
That's not an argument.
is a precious part of the British identity. We can now agree the police should spend time catching criminals, not believing complaints from random people that say they've been offended. Well, that's absolutely right. And 3 police forces, can you
Coming from a Telegraph journalist, that is hilarious.
believe, were involved in this? And Essex police have issued a statement. We investigate crimes reported to us without fear or favour. We're sometimes faced with allegations of crime where people have strong opposing views. That's why we work so hard to remain impartial and to investigate allegations regardless of where they might lead. Very good. Now,
I like how he just completely dismisses that, doesn't take it seriously. The fact that if someone's reported a crime, we should look into it and, have no fear or favour. I thought he didn't want a 2-tier policing system, but now, he does.
take that as seriously as you want to. I'm delighted for Allison, and I know she was genuinely worried and concerned about this. But what about the dozens of other people who every single day...
Got any data for this, Nigel? Dozens of people? Hundreds of people in the UK? I mean, if this is true, which I doubt it is, yeah, this is a problem. But is this happening as much as they would like to think? They take an anecdote and they blow it up out of proportion.
Get a knock on the door from the police. They're told they've been reported for a non-crime hate incident, and yet that will remain on their records, may well damage their prospects of getting jobs. It's all gone way too far. Now, Lionel Shriver,
Convenient for his rhetoric and his beliefs.
author and journalist, has written a piece in today's Spectator about this, and she thinks we need a very, very big reversal. And Lionel joins me live down the line. I read your piece earlier, so just tell us, where do you think the limits of free speech ought to move to?
I think this whole category of hate speech is a slippery slope and the beginning of the end of free speech. After all, hate speech is in the eye of the beholder. And in fact, even legally in the UK, that is how it's defined. It's hate speech if anybody calls it hate speech instantly. And that's why Allison was persecuted as well as prosecuted. Because
She wasn't prosecuted, was she? They dropped the case.
some fellow ex-civil servant, I think it was a fellow, objected, and then it went on for a year and involved 3 police forces. This is absurd. In the United States, there's no such thing as hate speech laws, and I think that the UK should get with that program. They're regarded as unconstitutional because they violate the First Amendment.
You're right. I mean, Alison, when she said to the police, who's made this accusation? Oh, no, Miss Pearson. The victim. That if someone takes offence, they are a victim automatically. So should we, under your definition...
Which is ironic coming from the right, who recently got really offended over a Boots advert that just had a black woman in it, and a Jaguar advert that had people of colour in it. But they're allowed to get upset and offended by that, but we're not, because they don't care about freedom of speech. They want freedom of speech as a blanket to say whatever they want. The right have always used this. Oh, we protect freedom of speech just so they can say what they want. That's all they. Again, Farage doesn't care about freedom of speech. He wants to ban trans ideology in classrooms and critical race theory, academic freedom. He doesn't care about freedom of speech.
Definition, and I fully understand the importance of the First Amendment and the way America feels about all of this, and quite right too. Should we be allowed to cause offence to whole groups of people? Should we be able to say, I don't like the Irish, or the Scottish are all mean, or a Yorkshireman never buys his round, or even things about different racial groups, religious groups? Should we, in your view, be free to say those things?
Nigel Farage would like that very much. He can't do that. He has to use the dog whistle. So he would very much like to say what he would like to say about Muslims, black people, people of colour.
Knowing they'll cause offence, but not being insightful.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that we should draw the line if it's an incitement to violence.
Oh, how nice. How kind.
Yes.
But otherwise, we tend to forget there's nothing illegal about racism, about being racist.
But why? But they're moaning about these adverts and racism towards white people. Why the minority now, and England's being taken over, and you can't say what you want anymore. What the hell are they talking about? They don't care. It's not about freedom of speech. It's about just saying what you want and not having any consequences. That's it. There's consequences for the left. Again, an advert or adverts like that are obviously not offensive in any way. But to them, it's like, oh.
And we all, have vague categorical opinions about groups of people. And a lot of those opinions are wrong.
Just admit it, you're racist. That's the thing. She can't admit it. Like, she's got assumptions about races. She has biological essentialist views on people. But, she should be able to say it,
But it shouldn't be a crime to be mistaken or even to be prejudiced. We all have our prejudices. And there's nothing wrong with expressing unpleasant views, and there is nothing illegal, or there shouldn't be, about offending people.
Nothing wrong. Of course there is. When you're spouting incorrect things about groups of people, of course that's wrong. That causes harm. Historically, that's caused harm, and that's where the harm comes from. Just making generalizations about people based on their skin color. And this is what happened here. She assumed that these young men were Palestinians. They weren't. Because their skin color, she made a generalization about them.
Well, because the truth is that there's hardly a thought in the world that doesn't offend somebody.
Yeah.
As soon as you start saying you can't offend people, you don't have free speech anymore. I mean, a very good example is, in the eye of many beholders, if you say a single discouraging word about a permissive immigration policy, you're racist. And therefore you can't have that discussion. And yet that's a very important discussion for any country.
You can, but you have to embed it in facts and data, not just prejudice, and make assumptions based on their skin color, who they are. And that's what's happened. That's what led to the riots in the UK. Lies and misinformation was spread about this young man, and it caused riots. So yeah, actually, this does cause harm in real life.
Country to have. Where do we draw the line? Who do we want in? How many? Do we integrate them? But no, to question immigration at all is potentially, for a lot of people, is to be prejudiced.
Lorna Shriver, thank you very much indeed for giving us those very, very clear views. Now, what was just said was kind of what I grew up with. Sticks and stones can't break my bones. People say rude things, ignore them, move on. Now,
the biggest victim of we're losing white culture, white identity. Oh, these adverts, the Jaguar advert. Oh, boots. Oh my God. These are the most whingy, whiny people. They don't care. Again, want to ban critical race theory. You want to ban trans ideology. Oh my God.
Through legislation, we've got police behaving like this. It was interesting, Stella, in the House of Commons today, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, saying that, he was really worried about the level of hate speech in this country. Lionel Shriver may be giving a position that many will find difficult to believe or accept these days, but quite logical. Do we need to rethink the legislation around this on hate speech laws?
I think both can be true. I think you can both be concerned about hate speech, and you can also want to have this free speech absolutism that you're saying. Because in my opinion, what we need to have is social repercussions for people who are expressing opinions that we find to be deeply offensive. So while there aren't any legal ones, because, as we said, this situation with Allison Pearson it's ridiculous. There isn't actually any law that makes what Allison Pearson did illegal. Let's be clear about that. So we don't need to change the legislation there. The legislation is fine. What's wrong is, for whatever reason, that police force in Essex thought that this was a good use
Well,
for
we
the
have
time.
these things now called protected categories. I mean, why not just treat everyone the same? I mean, wouldn't that
but
be more
I'm
consistent?
sure there are cases there, Nigel, which if you knew of, you would agree that this is a matter that needs to be dealt with. But what I think we need to return to is, look, you find something someone said deeply offensive, great. Don't be their friend. Shame them publicly. I have no problem with that. Don't hire them if you don't want to. That's it.
So it's a matter of taste, in a sense.
Well, I think there is a context point here, but on the protected characteristic issue that you raised, I mean, this is a hangover from the last Labour government, and hands up, the Conservative government could have done more on this, absolutely.
Well, it did nothing.
It did some things, but it could have done more on this, and, I think a lot of people are beginning to see this as a huge problem, because it's a question of priorities. So, yes, there's the context, but there's also the question of priorities. It is not a good use of finite police resources for police forces, 3 police forces, to be investigating a journalist. And it shows we've got our priorities wrong as a country. So whatever we make of the issue, whatever we make of people causing offence or not, it's about putting police resources where it's really needed.
It's all part of 2-tier justice, 2-tier policing and legislation that I think needs changing. A quick What the Farage moment. I have to do this because I want to talk about the BBC. Keir Starmer quoting BBC Verify, backing up his facts about how many small farms would be affected by inheritance tax.
Okay, so there is obviously a discussion to be had about the limits and the lines of free speech. But the fact that we should have free speech, absolutely, I just don't think that's the case, because he doesn't want that. He is always talking about racism towards, it's gone the other way towards white people. He doesn't believe that. So I think, yes, we should not be using kind of wasting police time on things like these unless they're really serious. Again, incitement to violence, where there's clear harm or potential harm done. I think, we can do it. But he's using this anecdote just to bash people and say, look, we should be able to say what we want about any race, because then that normalizes racism, and it means he can get his policy through then. It's very convenient for him. But again, he doesn't care about freedom of speech. He doesn't. And when you only care about it for you, not other people, it's not about freedom of speech. So comment below, does Farage care about freedom of speech? And I'll see you in the next video.